This is my review of the Polar Grit X Pro. This watch, I am pretty impressed with it. Now, if you've been following me, well, I guess only if you've been following me on Strava, you'll know that my watch, my primary running watch for the last year, has been the Polar Vantage V2. And this is an epic watch. I've really enjoyed using it. But I have to say, I haven't used it since I've got the Grit X. Now, the Vantage V2 is Polar's flagship watch, but they have made so many updates and they have made so many improvements to the Grit X Pro over the Grit X. I don't know, this could be the flagship. It kind of makes me wonder what Polar's gonna do next with the Vantage V2. But let's not worry about that for now. This is my review of the Polar Grit X Pro. I'm going to be talking about this watch as if you haven't had a Polar watch before. So we're going to be going over some of the features that have been present on other Polar watches. Now, the Polar Grit X Pro is marketed to outdoor kind of trail running as a more rugged option. But although I mainly run on roads, I still want that ruggedness. The Polar Grit X Pro has a sapphire lens. Sapphire is the second hardest clear substance behind diamond. So ultimately you can, when you're out trail running, go ahead and fall over and bash the screen against a rock. It's gonna be all right. Really, at this point in time, I think a sapphire lens on a sports watch is really the only option. And now we have it. But let's talk about price, because price is always something that everyone has to look at before they get a watch. The Polar Grit X Pro comes in at $499, well, let's just say $500. It is £440 in the UK and €500 in the rest of Europe. Oh, and I do just want to disclose that Polar was kind enough to send me this watch for the purpose of review. However, they haven't given me any instructions on what to say about the watch, and they are not going to get a chance to see this video before you do. So with that, Polar did send me the stainless steel black DLC Grit X Pro. The stainless steel version is also available in Nordic copper and Arctic gold. Now, for $100 more, you can also get the Grit X Pro Titan, which replaces the stainless steel bezel with a titanium bezel. Now, that's going to set you back another $100, so now we're up to $600 for the Grit X Pro Titan, and it is 12% lighter. And obviously, titanium is stronger than stainless steel, so you're getting a little more resiliency for that extra $100 and a little lighter watch. But ultimately, the guts are all the same. The Grit X Pro stainless steel version comes with just the rubber strap. The Titan version does include a leather strap. The Grit X Pro has been tested to military standards, so it will withstand temperatures between -20°C and +50°C. And it is also waterproof to 100 meters. Now, price is a pretty important reason when you're looking to buy a new running watch, but also battery life is right up there. And the Polar Grit X Pro will last for 7 days in watch mode with constant HR monitoring. Now, if you had GPS going, it'll last you 40 hours in GPS mode with full-time heart rate monitoring. So we know that we have 40 hours of GPS tracking ability. Most of us aren't going to be running 40 hours at one time. We're going to be breaking it up. Maybe we'll run for an hour one day, maybe we'll go out for a long run. But then on the fourth day, you set out and you think, do I need to charge my battery? How much battery do I have left? How much GPS time do I have left? Well, Polar has thought of this. And when you enter the sport mode, and you enter the sport mode by pressing the lower right-hand button, if we go to start training, we see it's already set on running. Now on the top of the screen right here, we can see a little battery symbol and we see 26 hours. So immediately before I start my run, I know that I can run for 26 hours with GPS pinging every second and monitoring my heart rate constantly. So while we're talking about battery life, the Polar Grit X Pro also features assisted GPS, and that allows the watch to predict where the GPS satellites are floating overhead. And because it has predicted where they are, it can lock onto the signal super quickly. So when I go to start my run, it takes seconds before the watch has locked onto the satellites and I'm ready to go. Now, I've got all the noises and beeps turned off, but when it locks onto the satellites, it gives you a nice haptic feedback to remind you to get going. Hey, I've got the satellites locked, let's go. I do realize I forgot to tell you one more thing about battery life. It can have up to 100 hours of GPS battery life when you turn on some of those battery saving modes. So basically, if you're going out for a really long time and you want to track your GPS positioning, you can turn on the battery savings mode, and basically it pings the satellites a lot less often. So if you're going out for a run around the block, obviously you don't want that on because it's not going to be accurate enough. But if you're going out for, let's say, a multi-day activity and you want to track that as you're trekking through the mountains, you have up to 100 hours of GPS tracking available. Okay, let's talk about heart rate. The Grit X Pro uses Polar's Precision Prime optical heart rate sensors, and it is pretty phenomenal. And I know that the Vantage V2 also uses the Precision Prime optical heart rate sensors, but in my testing, I haven't had any drops or spikes like I did with the Vantage V2. So that's really good. So if we look on the back of the watch, we can see that Polar is using 10 LEDs. We have 5 red, 4 orange, and 1 green. Hold on one second. Let me see if we can turn on these LEDs to get a visual. There we go. Well, it flashed on for a second, but you know, what can you do? So the multiple lights that Polar is using is so it makes it easier to read your heart rate no matter what your skin tone is. We want this to be good for everyone, and Polar has made it so it is. Polar has also partnered with Komoot to give you turn-by-turn directions on the watch. So basically, you can set up an account with Komoot, you can link it to Polar, and then when you create a route in Komoot, it syncs to the watch, and then you've got turn-by-turn directions right on your wrist. Now this is a great idea, and it's not something I use on a daily basis, but of course I had to set it up to test it to make sure it works, and it works well. However, Komoot is a paid app. Now, of course, they do let you download your home area. So basically, you put in the area of the world that you live in, and Komoot will give you that area for free. So obviously, it works for the majority of the time. But then if you go somewhere else, say on holiday, or you do a destination race, and you want to put a route into Komoot so you can move it onto your watch, you do have to pay extra for the other areas that you want to get the maps from. But all that aside, the directions work pretty well. Polar will pull all your routes from Komoot into Polar, and then it will download it to the watch when you sync it. And it gives you some good data. Shows you the elevation of the route, shows you the slopes if you're going up the hill, and you access it by going to the activity that you are going to be doing the route in. So for this example, let's say we're going to do running, just because that's what I generally do, is go to running. So we've got this little cog in the upper left-hand corner. If we press the button and we scroll down, we are going to find routes. We hit enter, and here is the one route that I've put in. It is 15.66 miles. Now, we can go ahead and start the route, but if we scroll down, we see like a little breadcrumb trail, the outline of the actual route. If we come down, now I do realize this is a pretty poor example because I live in a very flat area. I live in South Florida. The whole of South Florida is just a little bit above sea level. So it's not a great example of showing you the altitude differences. But if you look at the watch now, you are going to see the elevation profile of the 15.66 mile run. And basically when I'm running, this elevation profile will slowly shade in as I move along the route. From the routes screen, you can also scroll down and you can add a carbs reminder or a drink reminder. I think this would be a good time to tell you about fuel wise. Let's get out of this menu. We're going to go right back to the main screen, and we are going to go to our main settings page, and we are going to go up until we find fueling. Here we go. If we press enter, it will remind you when to take your gels, when to take your fueling for each activity. Now it's a smart reminder. So based on your history, based on your activity level, based on the effort that you're putting in, the watch will remind you when carbs are needed. Okay, but if you didn't want the watch to do the thinking for you and you wanted to set a manual carbs reminder, you can just scroll down. Manual carbs reminder, if we select that, we can tell the watch to remind us every 5-minute intervals. So let's say we want to take a gel every 25 minutes. I also want the watch to tell me about a drink. I want to know when to drink. So I want that to tell me every 25 minutes too. Now if I scroll down to the use now and press enter, now we can see this little icon on the left-hand side of the screen. It tells me that I'm using the fueling options and it's going to remind me on this run. There are loads of activities that you can use the Grid X Pro for, and it's fully customizable. So I think there are over 100 activities that you can actually choose from to use the Grid X Pro with. All those are available on the app, and you can choose up to 20 to move onto your watch. To access those sport profiles, we are going to press the lower left-hand button, we're going to press the middle button to access start training, and then we're going to use whatever training option we're doing. Right now we're running. I have trail running, I have walking, body and mind. Not sure what that one is, but I've still got it on there. Whatever sport you're into, there is a sport profile that you can put on your watch and track. The Grid X Pro also has what Polar is calling the hill splitter feature. And basically this takes all your data, the barometric altimeter, your GPS speed, your heart rate, and it figures out when you are running uphill and when you are running downhill. And then it breaks it all down, churns all that data together, and it'll give you your time running uphill, your time running downhill, the elevation gain, the elevation lost. It is a phenomenal feature, especially for mountain athletes. The Grid X Pro is controlled by 5 buttons. We have 2 on the left-hand side, we have 3 on the right-hand side. There is also a touchscreen. Now, I've got to tell you, I do love buttons on a sports watch. I like that tactile feel, and I like to know when I'm pressing that I can actually feel that I'm pressing the button rather than touching a screen. Perhaps there's a little bit of lag when you touch a screen. But the touchscreen is also a pretty handy option to have. I find I use the touchscreen the most when I'm trying to select options. Now, a dashboard is what Polar is calling the information around the time and the date. And it's very handy because it allows you to access a lot of information without going into an activity. So right now we can see I'm on the heart rate screen. If I use my finger and scroll to the right, we're going to change the dashboard. Now there are a lot of dashboards to choose from and they are fully configurable. So if there was some that you didn't like, you get to leave them out. But those are accessed by pressing the lower left-hand button. Then we're going to scroll through the menu until we see, oh, there it was, watch faces views. Now, if we enter into that, you can see we have options for time only, daily activity, cardio load status, continuous HR tracking, and you can see there's a little box on the left-hand side that is checked. That means that that's going to show up on your dashboards on your actual watch face. The Fitspark training guide gives you recommendations on what to do next, what kind of workouts to do next. So obviously my main sport is a runner. So my Fitspark training guide often suggests that I should be stretching or doing some strength exercises. And when you're in each one of these dashboards, if you press this button, the middle button on the right-hand side, it enters it and it gives you more information. Now from the dashboard right here, we can see that I'm on the Fitspark dashboard and it's telling me to build a supportive core. Now if I press this middle button on the right hand side, we enter Fitspark and we can see that the right hand side, the supportive area is highlighted. And the Grit X Pro is suggesting that I do a 25-minute core workout. Now I can scroll down and I can see other workouts that it wants me to do. And then if I were to press the enter button, it's going to walk me through each of the workouts that it suggests. Pretty handy, especially if you're kind of like a one-trick pony like me. I like my one sport, running, so I need a little extra help in other areas to work out. Now the Grit X Pro, or Polar in general, has excellent sleep tracking. At least it seems excellent to me. Of course, I sleep through most of the data gathering, so I can't be 100%, but looking at it after the fact, it seems like pretty legit. Now the app is fantastic. You can go to the app and you can get just loads of sleep data. It's going to tell you how much light sleep you got, how much deep sleep you got, how much time you spent in REM. But let's say you're out and about and you don't want to pull out your phone, you just want to look at your watch and see how well you slept. Well, you can have your nightly recharge as one of your dashboards, and when you press the enter button, it's going to give you your sleep rundown. Now I wanted to show you this right now because I actually got a very good night's sleep last night. You can see that my ANS charge is up, my sleep charge is up. Now if we scroll down, we are going to see, oh, these are some good numbers. Now if I wanted to see my ANS details, we can open that and I can see that it is much above usual. And we can also see your heart rate variability, which of course is arguably the most important metric to measure fitness and health. We can also see my average heart rate, my 28-day average heart rate, my beat-to-beat intervals. The Grit X Pro does have music controls, but it's important to know that it is only controlling the music on your phone. There is no onboard storage. But it works pretty well. If your phone is away in a pack, got it already pulled up, you can have the music controls as one of your dashboards, so you can just listen to music without being in activity, or you can have it set as one of the data screens in an activity. When it's on the dashboard, we're just going to go ahead and press enter to get into it. We can see here that we can press play on the watch and it actually plays the music. That's a little loud. If we hit the volume button on the top, we can then go ahead and lower the volume straight from our watch. Of course, you can switch tracks and do all the useful things that you want to if you're listening to music on your phone. You can also have the weather forecast as one of your dashboards, and it does receive push notifications. The Grit X Pro does have 22mm removable bands. The world of options on Amazon for replacing these bands. Grit X Pro also has a suite of testing options, so you can measure how good you are at pretty much everything fitness-wise. We can access the tests from going into the main menu by pressing the lower left button, scrolling until we find, oh, and went past it again, tests. There we have the orthostatic test, the leg recovery test, the cycling test, the running test, and the fitness test. Now the fitness test, this is my favorite because it's very basic. All you have to do is lie down and let the watch measure your heart rate variability, and then it spits out a VO2 max estimate based on that data. It also takes into account your age, your activity level, that kind of thing, in order to give you that VO2 max. The leg recovery test is a fun one. Now the watch walks you through what you need to do, but in a nutshell, you have to do 3 jumps. The watch measures how high you jump and the power that you jump with, and it lets you know how recovered your legs are. This is ideal for gauging your fatigue after you've done a long event when you've been using your legs a lot. We have the cycling test, which is basically an FTP test, but you do need to pair that with a power meter on your bike. Next up, we have the running test, which is basically a VO2 max test. So ultimately, I could have gone into a lot more detail on every one of the features of the Polar Grit X Pro, but I think you've got a good idea of this watch from this video. If you have any specific questions, go ahead and write them in the comments below, and I'll be happy to answer them. I have been using this watch for about a month before I made this video. And of course, I've been wearing the Polar Vantage V2 for about the last year, so I'm well versed in the Polar ecosystem. Now, we didn't go over the app in this video, but the Polar app is one of the best out there. It provides so much detail that I think most of us really enjoy seeing about our activities. Guys, my name's Matt. This has been my review of the Polar Grit X Pro. I post at least 2 new running videos a week on YouTube. Subscribe if you're not already. Give this video a thumbs up if you've made it all the way to the end. Be kind, be happy, run well. I will see you in a couple of days.